Have you ever wondered exactly what your price tag is? Mine was $18,500 a month. That was the cost to keep the Brightwell facade shiny. I thought I was a dutiful daughter until a 5 email called me an ugly ATM. They wanted my money, not my face. Fine. If I'm not invited to the party, I am certainly not paying to keep the lights on for it. My name is Imogen Brightwell. I am 34 years old, and according to the plaque on my office door at Vanguard Solutions in Lower Manhattan, I am a chief financial officer. My life is built on precision, on the careful balancing of ledgers, and on the absolute certainty that numbers do not lie. People lie, markets fluctuate, emotions deceive. But the math always adds up eventually. I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning in my Tribeca apartment. It is a beautiful space, or so I have been told by the interior designer I hired to make it look like a home. It features floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook a city that never really sleeps, gray cashmere throw blankets that I'm too afraid to wrinkle, and a kitchen that has never seen a dirty dish. It was dead silent, the kind of silence that feels heavy, pressing against your eardrums. It was December 23rd, and the air inside the penthouse was temperature-controlled to a perfect 68 degrees, yet I felt a chill that seemed to radiate from my own bones. Today was supposed to be a travel day. My suitcases were already standing like loyal sentries by the door. Packed with military efficiency, I had gifts wrapped in silver paper for my mother, a vintage watch for my father, and the latest gaming console for my brother, Tyler. I was heading to Aspen, Colorado. Specifically, to the Timberline Lodge, a sprawling estate that had been in the Brightwell family name for 2 generations, but which had only remained standing for the last decade because I paid every single contractor, tax bill, and maintenance fee. I sat on the edge of my bed, the silk sheets cool against my skin, and reached for my phone to check my flight status. There was a notification waiting for me. It was not from the airline. It was an email. The subject line read, "Christmas Logistics and Tyler's Big Night." It was a thread, a conversation that had been going on for the better part of the night while I slept. The sender was my father, Robert. The recipients were my mother, Eleanor, and my younger brother, Tyler. And, due to what I can only assume was a slip of a thumb or a moment of technological incompetence that the universe orchestrated for my benefit, my name was included in the carbon copy field. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and opened it, expecting a request for a last-minute grocery run or a reminder to pick up expensive wine from the duty-free shop. Instead, I found a dossier on my own. The most recent message was from my father. "I will handle it," he wrote. "I will tell her that the pipes in the guest wing burst last night and the plumbers cannot get there until after New Year's Day. We will tell her it is for her own comfort that she stays in New York. We all agreed we do not want her ruining the vibe this year." I blinked. I read it again. Ruining the vibe. I scrolled down to see the context. The thread began with a complaint from Tyler. My brother is 30 years old, unemployed, and currently finding himself for the 5th time in a decade. "I just don't want her there. Dad." Tyler had written, "She's so heavy. She comes in with that serious CFO face and asks me about my job search and just sucks the air out of the room. It makes me feel small. Plus, she's so unrefined. Remember last year when she tried to talk about interest rates during dinner? It's embarrassing. If she comes, I'm going to be stressed the whole time." Then came my mother's reply. Eleanor Brightwell, a woman who had not worked a day in 40 years. "Tyler is right. Robert, Imogen is just too intense. She does not fit in with the crowd we are inviting. The Jansons and the Vanderbilts are coming over on Christmas Eve. Imogen just sits there in the corner looking judgmental. It is better if she stays in the city. We can just ask her to FaceTime for 5 minutes to say hello, then a follow-up from Tyler. But make sure she still sends the bonus checks. Right, I need that cash for the ring." I sat there, frozen. The phone did not fall from my hand. I did not gasp. I did not burst into tears. My heart rate did not even spike. In my line of work, when you see a catastrophic loss on a balance sheet, you do not panic. You analyze. You assess the damage. You look at the data, The data was clear. I was not a daughter. I was not a sister. I was a resource. I was a utility, like electricity or running water, necessary for survival, but expected to remain invisible behind the walls. They called me unrefined. They called me embarrassing. This, coming from people who had not paid a single bill for their own lifestyle since I was 24 years old. I looked around my empty apartment. I thought about the flight I was about to board. I thought about the hours I spent working 80-hour weeks, missing dates, missing holidays, ruining my own health to ensure that the Brightwell name remained polished and pristine in the Hamptons and Aspen. The screen of my phone lit up again. A new notification slid over the email thread. It was an automated alert from my private banking app. Scheduled transfer, $12,000 to Brightwell Estate Management, processing in 24 hours. The juxtaposition was so sharp it almost drew blood. In one window, my family was conspiring to lie to me about broken plumbing to keep me away. In the other window, my money was queuing up to pay for the very roof they were sleeping under. I scrolled further down the email chain, my finger trembling ever so slightly. There was one more detail I had missed in my initial scan. "We need the house perfect for the party," my mother had written. "When Tyler proposes to Ashley on Christmas Eve, I want the photos to be spectacular. The lighting needs to be right. It is a shame Imogen won't be there to see it." But honestly, she would probably just ask how much the ring cost and spoil the romance. We will just tell her later. Tyler was getting engaged. My brother, who asked me for rent money 3 months ago because he claimed his car broke down, was buying an engagement ring, and he was hosting a lavish engagement party in the Aspen house, a party with caterers, expensive lighting, and high society guests. I had never even met a girl named Ashley. I did not know she existed. They were using my money to fund a celebration for a new family member, while actively cutting out the one family member who made the celebration possible. They wanted the engagement party to be perfect, and in their definition of perfection, I was the flaw. I was the stain on the tablecloth. The numbness began to recede, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. It was the same feeling I got when I found an embezzler in the company accounts. It was the realization that the entity you trusted was actually a parasite. I stood up and walked to the window. New York was waking up. The sky was a bruised purple, turning into a steel gray. I looked at the reflection of myself in the glass. I did not look unrefined. I looked tired. I looked used. My father's words echoed in my head. "We all agreed you are not welcome." It was a contract, a verbal agreement among shareholders to oust a founding partner. They thought they had the majority vote. They thought they held the power because they held the emotional leverage. But they forgot one thing. In any business, the person who controls the cash flow controls the company. I looked back at the banking notification. $12,000. That was just the maintenance fee. Then there was the mortgage, the heating bill, the electric bill, the country club dues, the credit cards. I was not going to Aspen. I was not going to cry. I was not going to call them and beg for an explanation. I walked over to my desk, opened my laptop, and sat down. The screen glowed, illuminating the dark room. I did not open my email to reply. I opened my banking portal. If they wanted a Christmas without me, I would give them exactly that. But if I was not welcome at the party, then I was certainly not going to be the one paying for the lights. I did not scream. I did not throw my phone against the wall. I did not call my best friend to sob about the betrayal. Those are reactions for people who deal in feelings. I deal in facts, and right now, the facts indicated that my entire understanding of my familial relationships was based on fraudulent data. I sat down at my glass desk and opened my laptop, the fan whirred to life. The only sound in the apartment other than my own steady breathing. I opened a fresh Excel spreadsheet. I named the file simply The Audit. I logged into my primary banking portal. I have always been meticulous about my finances, but I had never looked at the family category as a singular, aggregate data point. I treated it like a recurring subscription, something automatic and unquestioned, like taxes or death. Now, I was going to question every cent. I filtered the transaction history to display the last 5 years, 60 months of blind loyalty. I started categorizing the outflows. First, the fixed costs, the mortgage on the Aspen Lodge, $8,500 a month. I typed that into column B. Then the insurance, the property taxes, then came the variable costs, which were shockingly consistent in their excess. I pulled up the records for the secondary credit card I had given my mother for emergencies. The statement descriptors were a roadmap of narcissism, Neiman Marcus, the local esthetician, a charge for $400 at a liquor store on a Tuesday. I moved to cover my father's expenses, the Prestige Golf Club membership fees, $2,000 a month. I paused. He had told me years ago that he was an honorary member and paid a nominal fee. The bank statement said otherwise. Then there was Tyler. My brother lived in Los Angeles, supposedly pursuing a career in screenwriting. I was paying the rent on his apartment in West Hollywood, $3,800 a month. I scrolled through the Zelle transfers I had sent him. Car repair, laptop broken, medical copay. Acting headshots. I entered every single number into the spreadsheet. The rows filled up, hundreds of rows, thousands of dollars bleeding out of my accounts every 30 days. I summed the columns. I stared at the total at the bottom of the screen. The number was so large it looked abstract. $987,450, nearly $1 million. In 5 years, I had transferred nearly $1 million to the Brightwell ecosystem. I looked out the window at the street below where my car was parked. It is a gray sedan, 7 years old, with a scratch on the rear bumper that I have not fixed because I told myself it was a frivolous expense. I shop at outlets. I bring my lunch to work. I have not taken a vacation since I was 24. My father used to love sitting us down at the dinner table and saying, "Family is a business. Imogen, we are a corporation. Everyone contributes equity. Everyone shares the dividends." I realize now that he was right, but his interpretation of the corporate structure was flawed. I was not a partner. I was the venture capital firm dumping money into a failing startup that had no product, no revenue, and a burn rate that would make a Silicon Valley CEO blush. They were not contributing equity. They were embezzling the operating capital. I needed to see the paperwork. I logged into the Pitkin County Public Records database. It took me 3 minutes to find the deed for the Aspen property. I pulled up the document. There it was, in black and white PDF format. Owners of record Robert Brightwell and Eleanor Brightwell. My name was nowhere on the deed. I owned 0% of the house. Then I pulled up the mortgage note from the bank's internal records. Primary borrower, Robert Brightwell. Co-signer and guarantor, Imogen Brightwell. I felt a cold smile touch my lips. It was a brilliant scam. They held the asset. I held the liability. If the house was sold, they kept the profit. If the payments stopped, my credit score would be the one destroyed. I was not the daughter. I was the insurance policy. I was the angel investor for their vanity project. My phone buzzed on the desk, vibrating against the glass. The screen lit up with a message from Mom. I picked it up. The preview showed a picture of a snowy landscape that looked like it had been taken from a Google image search. "Oh, honey." The text read, "Bad news. There has been a terrible avalanche on the pass. The roads are completely blocked. The police say no one can get through for days. It looks like you won't be able to make it home for Christmas. We are so devastated." I waited. The 3 dots of her typing bubble appeared and disappeared. Then the follow-up message arrived. "Since you are stuck in New York, could you please wire the catering money a day early? Tyler wants to upgrade the wine for the Christmas Eve dinner. The caterer needs the deposit by noon. Love you." I stared at the screen. The audacity was almost impressive. It was breathtaking in its shamelessness. They were sticking to the script from the email. Lie about the logistics to keep me away, but ensure the cash pipeline remains open. An avalanche. They really thought I was stupid. I had the weather app open on my laptop. It was sunny and 40 degrees in Aspen. I let out a short, dry sound. It was a laugh, but it had no humor in it. It was the sound of a contract being terminated. I put the phone down and turned back to the banking portal. I wanted to see exactly where the mortgage payments were going. I clicked on the loan details, expanding the history. Something was wrong. The principal balance had not gone down. In fact, it was higher than it was 5 years ago. I frowned, leaning closer to the screen. How was that possible? I had been paying $8,500 a month like clockwork. I dug deeper into the transaction history of the mortgage account itself. I saw the incoming transfers from my account, but then I saw a series of outgoing withdrawals initiated by Robert Brightwell. 2 years ago, he refinanced. He had taken out a home equity line of credit, a second mortgage, effectively stripping all the equity out of the house. He had cashed out the value of the property that I had been paying for. And where did that money go? I traced the wire transfers from the line of credit. They went to an entity called Bit Horizon Exchange. I quickly searched for the name. It was a cryptocurrency trading platform that had collapsed and declared bankruptcy 6 months ago. My father had not just spent my monthly allowance, he had secretly mortgaged the house again, betting the farm on digital coins, and lost everything. And for the last 6 months, the money I sent for the mortgage wasn't paying for the house. It was paying the interest on his secret gambling debt. He was insolvent. The empire he was trying to protect from my unrefined presence was already gone. It was a hollow shell, held up by my money and his lies. I sat back in my chair. The coldness in my chest solidified into something hard and unbreakable. They wanted me to stay away so I wouldn't ruin the image. They had no idea that I was the only thing standing between them and total financial annihilation. Well, if they wanted to play pretend, I would let them. I would let them pretend they were rich. I would let them pretend I was not welcome. And I would let them see how long their pretend empire lasted when the real money decided to resign. I looked at my mother's text message regarding the fictional avalanche for exactly 10 seconds. My thumb hovered over the screen. A part of me, the part that had been trained for 3 decades to seek their approval, wanted to type a paragraph of apologies. I wanted to offer to drive through the storm, to hire a helicopter, to do anything to prove I was worthy of a seat at their table. But that part of me was dead. It had died the moment I saw the spreadsheet total. I typed a reply that was as cold and white as the snow they claimed was blocking the roads. I understand, I wrote. That is terrible luck. You all have a wonderful time. I will figure something else out. I hit send. It was a lie. But it was the most liberating lie I had ever told. It was a severance package disguised as compliance. I placed the phone face down on the desk and picked up the landline. I did not call the general customer service number for my bank. I dialed the direct line for the private wealth management division. I am a client who maintains a liquidity that demands a personal relationship manager. His name is Marcus. He answered on the second ring. Ms. Brightwell, Marcus said, his voice warm and professional. To what do I owe the pleasure so early in the morning? Do you need to authorize a holiday transfer? No, Marcus, I said. My voice was steady. It sounded different to my own ears. It lacked the frantic, rushing edge it usually had when I called him to cover my father's overdrafts. I am calling to execute a restructuring of my outgoing cash flow. I need you to open my standing authorizations. I could hear the clicking of his keyboard. I have the file open. What are we adjusting? Everything, I said. I want to cancel every single recurring payment set up under the profile tag family. That includes the mortgage payments for the Aspen estate, the lease payments for the Los Angeles apartment, the membership dues for the Prestige Golf Club, the monthly stipend transfers to the accounts ending in 456 and 889. The clicking on the other end stopped abruptly. Ms. Brightwell, Marcus said, his tone shifting from casual to cautious. Just to clarify, you want to stop the direct debits for the primary residence in Colorado? The next payment is scheduled to go out tomorrow morning. If we stop this, the mortgage will technically be in arrears immediately given the grace period terms. I am aware of the terms, I said. Cancel it. And the secondary credit cards? Marcus asked. The Centurion card issued to Robert Brightwell and the Platinum card issued to Eleanor Brightwell and the supplemental gold card for Tyler Brightwell. Cancel them, I said. Do not just suspend them. I want them closed. I want the authorization for those users permanently revoked effective this second. Imogen, Marcus said, dropping the formality for a brief moment. If I do this, and any of them try to swipe those cards for anything over a cup of coffee, they are going to be declined. It will be an immediate hard stop. Are you sure you want to proceed without notifying them first? I looked at the email thread on my laptop screen. We all agreed she is not welcome. I am absolutely sure, I said. They are unauthorized users as of this moment. Treat any attempted transaction by them as fraudulent activity. Understood, Marcus said. His voice returned to its crisp, professional cadence. I am executing the stop orders now. The mortgage payment is canceled. The recurring wires are terminated. The secondary cards are deactivated. Is there anything else? No, thank you, Marcus. Happy holidays. Happy holidays, Ms. Brightwell. I hung up. Step 1 was complete. The blood supply had been cut off. Now I needed to sever the nervous system. I pulled up the browser tabs for the utilities. I started with the Aspen Power and Light account. I logged in. My father never changed passwords. He used the same variation of his own name and birth year for everything. I went to the billing section. Current payment method Visa. Ending in 1234. Imogen. I clicked Remove. I changed the password to a random string of alphanumeric characters that I did not even bother to memorize. I saved it to my encrypted password manager. They would never guess it. Next was the heating oil company. Remove payment. Change password. Then the most critical one. The smart home security and automation system. The Aspen house was fully integrated. The lights, the thermostat, the heated driveway, the electronic locks, everything was controlled by a central server that required a monthly subscription fee to remain active online. I logged into the admin panel. I saw the status system online. Interior temperature 72 degrees. I went to the billing tab. I removed my credit card. A warning box popped up in bright red. Warning: removing the primary funding source will result in immediate suspension of remote access and automation features. The system will revert to manual override only. I clicked Confirm. It felt like I was performing surgery. I was exorcising a tumor that had been growing on my finances for a decade. With every click, I felt a physical sensation of weight lifting off my shoulders. I had expected to feel guilty. I had expected the old conditioning to kick in the voice in my head that said I was a bad daughter, that I was selfish, that I owed them everything. But that voice was silent. In its place was a profound, quiet relief. It was the feeling of finally putting down a heavy load after walking uphill for 10 years. I closed the utility tabs. The house in Aspen was now their problem. If they wanted electricity, they could pay for it. If they wanted heat, they could pay for it. I opened a new tab. Expedia. I had been promising myself a trip to Hawaii since I was 24. Every year. I cancel it. Every year. Something came up. Tyler needed bail money. Mom needed a surgery that insurance wouldn't cover. Dad needed to bridge a gap in his investments. I typed in Kauai. I selected the Princeville Resort. Ocean View Suite. Departure today. Return January 5th. The price was exorbitant. $6,000 for the flight and hotel. 2 days ago. I would have balked at the number. I would have told myself it was irresponsible. Today. I looked at the number and realized it was less than 1 month of what I paid for my family to insult me. I entered my credit card information. Booking confirmed. I stood up and walked to the suitcase by the door. I unzipped it. I took out the heavy wool sweaters, the thermal underwear, and the snow boots. I walked to my closet and pulled out sundresses, swimsuits, and sandals. I repacked the bag. It was lighter. Everything was lighter. I picked up my phone one last time. I opened a group chat named Brightwell Family. I went to the settings, mute notifications, hide alerts. I did not leave the group. Leaving would be a dramatic gesture, a cry for attention. I did not want attention. I wanted to be a ghost. I wanted to watch. I set the phone down and returned to my laptop for the final act of my morning. I opened my email client. I composed a new message. To Robert Brightwell, Eleanor Brightwell, Tyler Brightwell. Subject: financial update and transfer of assets. I did not write a long, emotional letter. I did not scream in all caps. I simply attached the Excel spreadsheet I had created, the one detailing the nearly $1 million of support. I wrote a single line in the body of the email: "Attached is the final accounting of my investment in this family. As of this morning, all external funding has been permanently withdrawn. Good luck with the business." I hovered over the send button. No, sending it now would be too merciful. It would give them a chance to scramble, to panic, to call me before I got on the plane. I clicked the arrow next to the send button. Schedule send. I scrolled through the calendar. December 25th, 8 o'clock in the morning. That would be exactly when they were waking up to open presents. That would be exactly when the house would be freezing because the heating subscription had failed. That would be exactly when the reality set in. I clicked schedule. I closed my laptop. I grabbed my suitcase. I walked out of my apartment and locked the door. I did not look back. The elevator ride down to the lobby felt like floating. I told the doorman to hail me a taxi to JFK Airport. "Going somewhere warm, Ms. Brightwell?" he asked, as he loaded my bag into the trunk. I smiled at him, and for the first time in years, the smile reached my eyes. "Yes," I said, "somewhere very warm and very far away." The time difference between Aspen, Colorado, and Kauai, Hawaii, is 3 hours, but the distance between my old life and my new reality felt like light years. While I was applying sunscreen on a pristine white beach in Hanalei Bay, the sun was just beginning to set over the timber-framed eaves of the Brightwell estate. I had my phone with me, but it was face down on the small teak table next to my lounge chair, buried under a pair of sunglasses and a room key. I was not looking at it, but I could feel it vibrating. It was a rhythmic, angry buzzing against the wood, like a trapped insect. Back in Aspen, the stage was set. I could picture it perfectly. My father, Robert, would be in the great room, wearing his cashmere sweater, the one I bought him for his 55th birthday, and holding a glass of single malt scotch that cost $40 a pour. He would be surrounded by neighbors and potential business partners, gesturing grandly with his free hand, talking about legacy and market resilience. He loved to play the role of the benevolent patriarch, the man who had conquered the mountain. He was inviting everyone to the Christmas Eve party, promising vintage wines and imported caviar, completely unaware that the credit card authorized to pay for the catering had been incinerated in a digital bonfire that morning. The first crack in the facade appeared around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Aspen time. I knew this because that was when the first barrage of notifications hit my phone. My mother, Eleanor, had gone to the Opera ski spa at the St. Om Regis. It was her ritual: a deep tissue massage, a facial, and a pedicure before the holiday madness. The bill usually came to around $600. She would have handed the receptionist her platinum card, the supplementary one linked to my primary account, with the casual indifference of someone who has never had to count pennies. I imagined the scene. The receptionist, smiling politely, sliding the card into the chip reader, the pause, the awkward second attempt, the soft, apologetic voice saying, "I am sorry, Mrs. Brightwell, but the card has been declined." My mother would have laughed, a high, tinkling, nervous laugh. She would have blamed the machine. She would have blamed the chip. She would have told them to run it manually, but the system does not lie. Issuer declined. Contact bank. She likely had to dig into her purse for her own personal debit card, the one attached to the joint account she shared with my father, an account that I knew was dangerously low on funds. But that was just a tremor. The earthquake happened an hour later. My brother, Tyler, he was at the jeweler in town. I knew exactly which one. He had sent me links to 3 different rings over the last month, asking for my opinion. I had ignored them because I knew he expected me to pay for it. He was there to pick up the engagement ring for Ashley. It was a 3-carat oval cut. I recall the price tag was roughly $15,000. The buzzing on the table intensified. I picked up my phone and glanced at the screen. 5 missed calls from Tyler. 10 missed calls from Tyler. 12 missed calls from Mom. 20 missed calls from Tyler. I watched the number climb to 21, then 22. I did not swipe to answer. I did not feel a spike of panic. Instead, I felt a strange, detached curiosity. It was like watching a nature documentary where a predator realizes it has walked into a trap. I took a sip of my Mai Tai. The condensation on the glass was cool against my fingertips. Finally, the buzzing stopped long enough for a voicemail notification to pop up. It was from Tyler. I pressed play and held the phone up to my ear, listening to the sound of my brother's voice over the crashing waves of the Pacific Ocean. "Imogen," he was hissing, he was whispering, probably huddled in the corner of the jewelry store or outside on the sidewalk. "What the hell is going on? I am at the counter. I just tried to swipe the gold card and it said, 'Refer to issuer.'" The guy looked at me like I was a criminal. I tried it 3 times. "Imogen, this is humiliating. Ashley is waiting in the car. Fix this. Call the bank right now and tell them to unblock it. I look like an idiot." His voice cracked on the last word. It wasn't fear. It was indignation. He truly believed this was a clerical error, a mistake that I was responsible for fixing. He thought the money was his birthright. I deleted the voicemail. Back at the house, the chaos was spreading. Though they were still trying to deny it, I checked my email. Because I was still the administrator on the utility accounts, even though I had removed my payment methods, I still received the alerts. Subject: Urgent notice. Aspen Power Light. Status overdue. Message: Your account is in arrears. Previous attempts to process auto payment have failed. Please update your payment method immediately. Service disconnection is scheduled for 48 hours from this notice. I knew my father would see this email, and I knew exactly what he would do. He would mark it as spam. He believed that bills were things that happened to other people, or things that Imogen handled. He was too busy playing the wealthy host to worry about a menacing email from the electric company. He probably thought it was a phishing scam, but the real blow, the one that would actually bruise his ego, came from a source he couldn't delete. My phone rang again. This time, the caller ID did not say Dad or Tyler. It said, "Mr. Henderson, Timberline Management." Mr. Henderson was the property manager for our private road. He handled the snow plowing. It had snowed 18 inches the night before. If the driveway wasn't cleared, no guests could get up the hill for the party. I let it go to voicemail. I didn't need to talk to him. I knew what he wanted. 5 minutes later, my father's phone would ring. I could see it. Robert standing by the fireplace, laughing at a joke, checking his phone. He would answer, expecting it to be a well-wisher. "Robert here," he would boom. "Mr. Brightwell." "Mr. Henderson," would say. I had spoken to this man for 10 years. He was a no-nonsense local who didn't care about Hampton's social standing. "I can't get a hold of your daughter. The plows are at the bottom of the drive, but the credit card on file for the service contract was declined. It came back as closed." "Closed?" my father would sputter, his face turning that shade of red that clashed with his sweater. "That's ridiculous. Just run it again. Or send us a bill." "I can't do that. Mr. Brightwell," Henderson would reply. "We have a strict policy, $5,000 for the season, paid up front, or per plow pricing. Since the account is closed, I need a new card for the $5,000 before I drop the blade. Otherwise, my guys are moving on to the next house." "Just charge Imogen," my father would yell, stepping away from his guests, lowering his voice so they wouldn't hear. "She handles the logistics. There must be a mistake with her bank." And then, the sentence that would stop his heart. "I tried, sir," Henderson would say. "The bank didn't say it was an error. They said the account was terminated by the account holder. Imogen closed it. Mr. Brightwell." I looked out at the ocean. The sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold. It was warm. It was peaceful. In Aspen, the snow was piling up on the driveway. The driveway was blocked. The ring was unbought. The lights were ticking down to darkness. I ordered another cocktail. It seemed like the responsible thing to do. It was December 23rd, and while the trade winds were gently rustling the palm fronds outside my hotel window in Kauai, the laws of thermodynamics were exacting a brutal toll on the Timberline Lodge in Aspen. I knew exactly what was happening because I had the notifications pushed to my phone. Even though I had revoked my administrative access, the server logs were still emailing me status reports, like a captain sending distress signals from a sinking ship to the shore command that had already abandoned them. Alert server connection lost. Alert HVAC control module offline. Alert interior temperature dropped below 65 degrees. Alert interior temperature dropped below 50 degrees. The smart home system I had installed 3 years ago was state-of-the-art. It controlled everything from the heated floors in the master bathroom to the climate-controlled wine cellar. But like all modern conveniences, it required a subscription. It needed a constant handshake with the central server to verify the account status. When I removed my credit card, that handshake became a slap in the face. The system did not just stop working. It locked down. The thermostats went blank. The furnace, confused by the lack of digital instructions, defaulted to a safety shutoff mode. The temperature outside in Aspen was 4 degrees below zero. I could picture the scene inside the great room. My father, Robert, likely wearing his outdoor coat inside, furiously tapping at the sleek glass panel on the wall, screaming at a piece of technology he never bothered to understand. My mother, Eleanor, wrapped in 3 layers of cashmere, shivering not just from the cold, but from the terrified realization that her comfort was entirely dependent on a daughter she had dismissed as irrelevant. The power was the next domino to fall. The email from the electric company had been ignored. Just as I predicted, at 4 p.m, the main breaker for the grid connection was remotely tripped. The house did not just get cold. It went black. That was when the panic truly set in. My phone, which had been buzzing intermittently all day, suddenly began to convulse on the nightstand. It was a continuous stream of incoming calls. Robert, Eleanor, Tyler, Robert again. Unknown number, private caller. They were cycling through every phone in the house, then their cell phones, then likely the phones of the few guests who had managed to arrive before the snow blocked the driveway. I let it ring. I poured myself a glass of iced water and watched the sun play on the ocean. Then came the texts. The wall of silence I had built was being bombarded with digital guilt. My mother led the charge. Her messages popped up on my lock screen. A frantic stream of consciousness. Imogen, pick up the phone. The power is out. It is freezing here. Your father is trying to fix the generator, but it won't start because it hasn't been serviced. You were supposed to schedule the service. We are freezing. Do you hear me? We are sitting in the dark. You are killing us. How can you be so cruel? This is your family. We are old people. Imogen. I stared at that last message. You are killing us. It was the ultimate manipulation. They were healthy, capable adults sitting in a multi-million-dollar mansion, yet they claimed helplessness because they refused to pull out their own wallets. I decided it was time to speak. I unlocked my phone. I did not call. I did not offer to fix it. I simply wanted to clarify the terms of our new arrangement. I typed a single message and sent it to the group chat. I thought you all agreed I was not welcome this Christmas. I am just respecting that decision. If I am not part of the celebration, I am not part of the overhead costs. The reaction was instantaneous. The typing bubbles for all 3 of them appeared at once, like a synchronized dance of outrage. They stopped pretending the outage was an accident. They stopped pretending it was a bank error. They realized, in that second, that I had seen the email, the reply all disaster. A normal family, caught in such a betrayal, might apologize. They might feel ashamed. But the Brightwells do not do shame. They do deflection. They pivot to offense. My father's reply came first, and it was seething with the righteous indignation of a man who has never been told no. So you were snooping. You read a private email between me and your mother. That is a federal crime. Imogen, you are petty and vindictive. We are your parents. Turn the power back on immediately. We have guests arriving tomorrow. Do not embarrass us. He did not deny what he said. He did not apologize for calling me at an ATM. He was only angry that I had caught him, and even angrier that I had the audacity to react. To him, my role was to be insulted and pay for the privilege. Then Tyler chimed in. You are ruining my engagement. Ashley is going to think we are poor. You are a psycho. Fix this now, or I swear I will never talk to you again. I laughed out loud in the empty hotel room. Never talk to me again. That was not a threat. It was a promise of paradise. I put the phone back on Do Not Disturb, but Tyler, even the performer, was not done. If he could not bully me privately, he would try to shame me publicly. He took the fight to the only arena where he felt he had power: social media. I have a burner Facebook account, a blank profile I use solely to monitor the family's public image, another task I used to do to protect them, now a tool for my entertainment. I saw the notification. Tyler had posted a status update. It was a masterpiece of vague booking and victimhood. He wrote, "Cannot believe how selfish some people can be. You think you know your family, but then they stab you in the back right before the holidays. Freezing in the dark because someone decided to play games with our lives. My parents are shivering, heartbroken that my own sister would do this to us. Some people just have ice in their veins." He tagged me. The comments started rolling in immediately. His friends, a collection of aspiring influencers and trust fund kids, were outraged on his behalf. "Oh my God. Ty, that is awful. Is she serious? Call the police. Stay strong. Mr. Brightwell, your sister sounds toxic. Karma will get her." I watched the comments count. Tick up. 20 comments. 30. They were painting me as a monster, and he was soaking up the sympathy. He was the poor, victimized prince, and I was the wicked witch. I considered responding. I could have posted the email thread. I could have posted the bank statements, but that would look defensive. Then, I saw a new comment appear. It was not from me. It was from Sarah. Sarah was a former senior accountant at Vanguard Solutions. She had worked directly under me for 4 years before moving to a competitor. She knew my finances because she had helped me organize my tax returns last year. She knew exactly how much I carried them. She also knew Tyler, because Tyler had once hit on her at a company party and then called her stuck up when she politely declined him. Sarah did not write a paragraph. She did not write a rant. She simply posted a single image in the comments. It was a screenshot, a redacted version of a spreadsheet one I had shown her once when I was venting about my budget. It showed a single year of Tyler Brightwell lifestyle support. Rent $45,000, car lease $12,000, credit card payoff $18,000, allowance $24,000, total $99,000. Under the image, Sarah wrote just one sentence. "Weird that she is so toxic when she paid nearly 6 figures last year, so you could pretend to be an actor. Maybe you should use some of that allowance to buy a generator." The effect was nuclear. The comment section froze. The "Stay Strong Ty" comments stopped. A mutual friend of ours commented, "Wait, she pays your rent. I thought you said you sold a script." Another cousin commented, "Damn." 2 minutes later, the post was gone. Tyler had deleted it. The shame of being exposed as a fraud outweighed the desire to paint me as a villain. He could not risk his fiancée, Ashley, seeing that breakdown. He could not risk the world knowing that his acting career was entirely subsidized by the sister he just called a psycho. I closed the Facebook tab. The house in Aspen was dark. The house in Aspen was cold. And now, the silence in the house was not just from the lack of electricity. It was the silence of people who had just realized that their microphone had been cut off, and the audience was laughing at them. I ordered room service, lobster bisque. It felt appropriate to eat something warm while they were figuring out how to survive the night. It was Christmas Eve, December 24th, in Kauai. The air was scented with plumeria and salt spray. In Aspen, judging by the feed on my laptop screen, the air was scented with pine needles, expensive perfume, and the distinct acrid odor of social desperation. I was sitting on the balcony of my hotel suite, wrapped in a silk robe, with a glass of chilled white wine in my hand. On the screen before me was the live feed from the security cameras positioned around the Timberline Lodge. I had canceled the cloud storage subscription, meaning nothing was being recorded for posterity. But the live viewing function was still active until the end of the billing cycle at midnight. It was the final episode of my favorite reality show, and I had a front row seat. The guests began arriving at 7 o'clock. It was a parade of automotive luxury. Range Rovers, G-Wagons, and Bentleys navigated the snow-packed driveway. My father must have paid someone cash to plow it at the last minute, likely pawning a watch or dipping into an emergency stash I didn't know about. They stepped out of their heated cars into the biting cold of the Colorado night. Women in floor-length furs and men in tailored wool coats made their way to the front door, expecting the warm embrace of a roaring fire and the smell of roasting spices. Instead, they walked into a mausoleum. The house was pitch black. The only light came from a chaotic scattering of candles that my mother must have dug out of the emergency drawer. These were not the elegant, scented pillars she usually displayed. These were half-used citronella candles from summer, stubby tea lights, and a few emergency flares that cast a harsh, flickering red glow against the walls. It looked less like a high society gala and more like a seance gone wrong. I switched camera views to the driveway. The catering van had arrived. It was Le Petit Chef, the most exclusive catering service in Aspen. I knew the owner, Jean-Luc. He was a man who demanded perfection and payment. In that order, the driver was standing by the back of the van, arms crossed. My father, Robert, was standing in front of him, gesturing wildly. The audio feed on the camera was crackly, but I could hear the shouting. "Unload the food!" my father yelled. "My guests are inside. We have a schedule." "I cannot, Monsieur Brightwell," the driver replied, his voice calm but firm. "The office messaged me. The final 50% deposit was not received. It was due at 5 o'clock. No money, no lobster." Usually, I would have wired that money 2 days ago. I would have smoothed over the cracks. Today, the crack was a canyon. I saw my father reach into his wallet. He pulled out his black credit card, the one he was so proud of. He handed it to the driver with a sneer of arrogance. "Here," Robert snapped. "Just run the whole thing now, and add a 10% tip. Now get the food inside." The driver pulled out a mobile card reader. He inserted the card. I took a sip of my wine, waiting. The driver shook his head. "Declined, monsieur." "Try it again," my father barked. "It is a black card. It says, 'Do not honor,' sir. That usually means the limit is reached." The limit was reached because my father had maxed it out trying to salvage his crypto losses. And without my monthly infusion of $18,000 to pay down the balance, the card was nothing more than a piece of plastic. "This is ridiculous," Robert shouted, looking over his shoulder at the guests peering out from the windows. "Here, try this one." He handed over another card. My mother's joint card. "Declined." The driver put the reader away. "I am sorry. Monsieur Brightwell, I have strict orders. We are leaving." "You can't leave," my father screamed, grabbing the door handle of the van. "I have 50 people in there. What am I supposed to feed them?" "That is not my problem," the driver said. He got into the cab, started the engine, and drove away, taking the prime rib, the truffle mashed potatoes, and the vintage champagne with him. My father stood alone in the dark driveway, illuminated only by the red taillights of the retreating van. It was a cinematic moment of pure defeat. Inside the house, the mood had shifted from confusion to irritation. I switched back to the interior camera in the great room. The house was freezing. I could see the guests' breath puffing in the air like little clouds of judgment. They were keeping their coats on. Tyler's fiancée, Ashley, was standing near the fireplace, which was producing a lot of smoke but very little heat because the chimney flue hadn't been cleaned, another maintenance task I usually scheduled. She looked miserable. She was whispering to Tyler, gesturing at the dark chandeliers and the shivering guests. Tyler looked like a trapped animal. He kept checking his phone, probably hoping for a miracle transfer from me, but I had blocked his number. My mother, Eleanor, was attempting damage control. She was walking through the crowd carrying a silver platter. I zoomed in. She was serving a box of Ritz crackers and a tin of Danish butter cookies, the kind you buy at a pharmacy for $5. "Technical difficulties," I heard her chirping, her voice an octave too high. "Just a little appetizer before the main course. The power company is working on it. The guests were not eating the crackers. They were whispering. The polite veneer of the upper class was cracking. My father entered the room, stomping the snow off his boots. He clapped his hands, trying to command the room. "Everyone, everyone," he announced, putting on his best boardroom smile, though it looked ghastly in the candlelight. "Apologies for the ambiance. There has been a massive grid failure. The entire side of the mountain is out. A transformer blew, but we are Brightwells. We persevere. The food is being plated manually in the kitchen." He was lying through his teeth, and it was a bad lie. I watched as one of the guests, a woman in a leopard print coat, walked to the large bay window. She pulled back the heavy drapes. "Robert," she said, her voice cutting through the room, "if the grid is out, why is the Mackenzie house next door lit up like a Christmas tree?" There was silence. Through the window, in the background of the shot, the neighbor's house was indeed blazing with light. They had strung thousands of LEDs on their trees. It looked like Las Vegas. The contrast with the Brightwell tomb was stark. They have an industrial generator," my father stammered. "Ours is undergoing maintenance." "It looks like they have power to me, Bob," said a man sitting on the sofa. I recognized him immediately. It was Mr. Vance. He was a high-powered real estate attorney in Denver. My father had invited him to try and court him as an investor for some new scheme. Mr. Vance stood up. He was holding a glass of lukewarm water because there was no ice. He looked annoyed. "Actually, Robert," Mr. Vance said, his voice carrying the weight of a courtroom verdict, "I don't think it is the grid, and I don't think it is the generator." "Now, Jim, don't start," my father warned, stepping forward. "I saw your name on the docket this morning, Bob," Vance continued, oblivious to the social homicide he was committing. "I checked the county foreclosure listings for a client. This address is flagged. Pre-foreclosure warning. Notice of default filed 3 days ago." The room went deathly silent. Even the wind howling outside seemed to pause. My mother dropped the silver platter. The Ritz crackers scattered across the Persian rug like confetti. "What?" Eleanor whispered. She turned to her husband. "Robert, what is he talking about?" "Foreclosure. He is lying," my father shouted, his face turning purple. "It is a clerical error. Imogen handles the bills. She must have missed a payment. It is her fault." "Imogen isn't on the deed, Bob," Vance said calmly, adjusting his glasses. "I saw the filing. It is just you and Eleanor, and the debt isn't a missed payment. It is a second mortgage. You leveraged the equity 6 months ago. The bank is calling the note." Tyler stepped forward, his face pale. "Dad, you took out a second mortgage, but you said we were liquid. You said the trust was fully funded." "I was investing," my father roared, cornered. "I was trying to double our money. It was a sure thing. And if your ungrateful sister hadn't cut me off today, I could have floated the interest until the market turned." The truth hung in the air, cold and undeniable. There was no Imogen to blame. There was no technical glitch. There was only a man who had gambled his family's home and lost, and a family that had been too busy spending money to notice it wasn't theirs. Ashley, the fiancé, looked at Tyler. She looked at the crackers on the floor. She looked at the dark, freezing house. "I am going home," she said quietly. "Ash, wait," Tyler pleaded. "My parents warned me." "Tyler," she said, buttoning her coat. "They said you guys were all smoke and mirrors. I didn't believe them. I guess I do now." She walked out the front door. One by one, the other guests followed. They muttered awkward apologies, buttoned their coats, and fled the sinking ship. Within 10 minutes, the great room was empty. Only Robert, Eleanor, and Tyler remained, standing in the flickering candlelight of a house they no longer really owned, surrounded by the wreckage of their own ego. I watched for a moment longer. Then, I closed the laptop. "Merry Christmas," I whispered to the empty ocean air. The silence that followed the exodus of the guests was heavier than the snowfall burying the driveway outside. Through the grainy, monochrome lens of the security camera in the living room, I watched the aftermath of the most disastrous Christmas Eve in Brightwell family history. The house was a cavern of shadows, illuminated only by the dying embers of the fireplace and the few candles that had not yet burned down to puddles of wax. The social veneer had been stripped away. There were no more forced smiles, no more talk of legacy or dividends. There were just 3 people in a freezing room, shivering in their expensive clothes, forced to confront the wreckage of their own making. My mother, Eleanor, was sitting on the edge of the velvet sofa. Her posture, usually rigid with aristocratic poise, had collapsed. She looked small. She was holding a napkin, twisting it around her fingers until the fabric threatened to tear. "Robert," she said. Her voice was faint, picked up by the high-sensitivity microphone I had installed for security purposes. "Tell me Mr. Vance was drunk. Tell me he was lying about the foreclosure." My father was pacing back and forth in front of the hearth. He was still wearing his coat, his collar turned up against the 40-degree chill of the room. He waved his hand dismissively, a gesture I had seen 1,000 times when he was trying to make a problem disappear. "Vance is a shark, Eleanor," Robert insisted. Though his voice lacked its usual boom, "he is jealous. He saw a filing for a different property and got confused. I will call the bank on Monday and clear it all up. It is just a misunderstanding, probably a glitch in their system." "A glitch," my mother repeated. "Like the credit card at the spa, like the catering van, like the lights going out." "It is Imogen," Robert shouted, turning on his heel. "She is doing this. She is manipulating the accounts to punish us because we didn't invite her. She is probably hacking the bank records right now." I sat on my hotel balcony in Kauai, listening to him scapegoat me one last time. It was pathetic. It was time to deliver the final exhibit in my case against them. I opened my email client. I had one more document prepared. I had found it during my deep dive into the public records 2 days ago, buried in a subfolder of a county clerk filing from 2 years prior. It was a loan agreement, a private, hard money loan for $200,000 with an interest rate of 15%. The purpose stated was home improvements. The reality, I knew from cross-referencing the dates, was that he had dumped the entire sum into a speculative cryptocurrency altcoin that had gone to zero in 3 weeks. But the worst part was not the gambling. It was the signature page. There was Robert's signature, bold and sprawling, and right below it, on the line marked guarantor, was a signature that looked remarkably like mine. It was a good forgery. He had practiced. But the date stamp on the digital notary log showed the IP address of the signing computer was located in Aspen, Colorado. On that day 2 years ago, I was in London closing a merger for Vanguard Solutions. I could prove I was 4,000 miles away when I supposedly signed that document. I attached the PDF to a new email. Subject, the guarantor, to Eleanor Brightwell. I hit send. On the screen, I saw my mother's phone light up on the coffee table. She ignored it. "Read it, Mom," I whispered to the screen. She picked it up. Squinting in the candlelight, she tapped the screen. I watched her face. First, confusion, then recognition. She zoomed in on the signature. She looked up at Robert, who was still rambling about suing the power company. "You signed her name," Eleanor said. Her voice was ice cold. Robert stopped pacing. "What?" "This document," she said, holding the phone up with a trembling hand. "It is a loan for $200,000 from 2 years ago. Imogen is listed as the guarantor. That is her signature. But she wasn't here 2 years ago. We were alone. I handled it for her," Robert stammered. "It was a formality. She agreed to it verbally. I just saved her the paperwork." "She didn't know," Eleanor whispered. "That is why you have been so desperate for her to keep sending money. You weren't investing in it. You were paying the interest on a loan you forged her name on." Robert slammed his hand against the mantelpiece. "I did it for us. I was trying to get us back on top. I almost had it. Eleanor, if that coin had rallied, we would have been worth $10 million. I took the risk for this family." "You committed a felony," she said. I waited. This was the moment The moment my mother would finally realize that her husband was a criminal and her daughter was the victim. I expected her to scream at him. I expected her to tell him to get out. Instead, my phone rang. It was Eleanor. I hesitated, then swiped to answer. I put it on speaker so I could hear her voice in real time while watching her on the screen. "Hello, Mother," I said. "Imogen," she said. She was crying. Deep, heaving sobs that racked her small frame. "Imogen, please." "I know you saw the document," I said calmly. "He forged my signature. That is fraud. That is identity theft. That is why the bank is foreclosing, because the hard money lender placed a lien on the house when the payments stopped. Imogen, listen to me," she pleaded. "You can't tell anyone. You cannot report this." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "Your father," she choked out. "He is 58 years old. He has high blood pressure. If you report this fraud to the authorities to clear your name, they will arrest him. He will go to prison. Imogen, federal prison. He stole my identity. Mom, he put me on the hook for $200,000 plus interest." I know," she wailed. "But he did it because he was desperate. He loves us. He just wanted to provide. Please, Imogen, you have so much money. You are successful. You can absorb this. Just pay it off. Fix the house. We will sign whatever you want. Just don't let them take him away." I felt a physical blow to my chest, harder than any insult they had thrown at me in the email. She wasn't calling to apologize for how they treated me. She wasn't calling to ask if I was okay. She was calling to ask me to be the accomplice to the man who had robbed me. She was asking me to sacrifice my financial record to save the predator. In her eyes, his crime was a mistake of love. My reaction was an act of cruelty. "You are asking me," I said, my voice trembling with a rage I had suppressed for decades, "to pay $250,000 to cover up the fact that your husband committed a crime against your daughter." "He is your father," she screamed. "Family protects family." "No," I said. "Family doesn't steal from family. The family doesn't call their daughter to an ATM and then beg for a deposit. Imogen, please, if you don't help, we have nowhere to go." "I am not going to call the police," I said. The decision came to me with absolute clarity. I did not want the drama of a trial. I did not want to see him in handcuffs. That would require me to care, and I was done caring. "I will not press charges." I saw her shoulders slump with relief on the camera. "Oh, thank God. Thank you, darling. So you will wire the funds tomorrow?" "No," I said. She froze. "What?" "I said I won't call the police, but I also won't pay a single dime. I am filing a fraud affidavit with the bank to remove my name from the loan. I will prove I didn't sign it. The bank will then come after him for the money. If he can't pay, they will take the house. And if the bank decides to press criminal charges for the forgery, that is between him and the federal government. I am out." "You can't," she shrieked. "That is the same thing as sending him to jail." "That is the consequence. Mother, goodbye." I hung up. I watched on the screen as she threw the phone across the room. She collapsed onto the sofa, burying her face in her hands. I felt hollowed out. The last thread of hope that my mother might actually love me more than she loved the lifestyle had snapped. I was about to close the laptop and pour another drink when a notification popped up on my work email. It was marked high importance. It was strange. It was Christmas Eve. The office was closed. I opened the email app. The sender was Arthur Sterling, the CEO of Vanguard Solutions, my boss, a man who respected me implicitly. Subject: urgent compliance matter. Immediate suspension. My stomach dropped. "Imogen, I am writing this with deep concern. I just received a disturbing call on my private line from a Mr. Tyler Brightwell, who identified himself as your brother. He claims to have evidence that you have been siphoning company funds to support personal real estate investments in Colorado and Hawaii. He alleges that your family support has actually been a cover for money laundering through offshore crypto exchanges. He claims he was a distressed witness to these activities. Given the severity of these accusations and SEC regulations, I have no choice but to place you on immediate administrative leave pending a full forensic audit of your accounts. Your access to company servers has been revoked effective immediately. We will speak on Monday. Arthur. I stared at the screen. The air in Hawaii suddenly felt very cold. Tyler. He had been in the corner of the room during the whole argument. He had heard everything. He realized that if I didn't pay, the inheritance was gone. The house was gone. His easy life was gone. He knew he couldn't convince me to pay, so he decided to destroy me instead. He thought if he blew up my career, I would be forced to come back to them, or perhaps he just wanted to burn me down out of pure, spiteful vengeance. He was accusing me of the very crime our father had committed, crypto gambling, projecting their sins onto my clean record. I looked at the security camera feed one last time. Tyler was sitting in the armchair, tapping on his phone. He looked up at his parents, a smirk playing on his lips. He looked like a man who thought he had just played a winning ace. He had no idea. He thought he had trapped me, but he had just made the classic mistake of the amateur criminal. He had invited a forensic audit, and I was the best auditor in New York. He hadn't just declared war. He had signed his own confession. I walked into the glass-walled conference room on the 45th floor of the Vanguard Solutions building at 9 o'clock sharp on Monday morning. The view of the Hudson River was gray and steel-hard, a stark contrast to the turquoise waters I had left behind in Hawaii. Sitting at the long mahogany table were Arthur Sterling, our CEO, and the Director of Human Resources. On the table between us sat a thick file folder. It was the physical manifestation of my brother's betrayal. Arthur looked tired. He was a man who valued loyalty above all else, and the accusation that his CFO was embezzling company funds to launder money through cryptocurrency was a heavy blow. "Imogen," Arthur said, his voice grave. "You know why we are here. The allegations made by your brother are specific. He claims you moved company assets into offshore accounts to cover personal losses in the crypto market. He claims he has seen the transfers." I sat down. I did not fidget. I did not look away. I placed my own briefcase on the table and opened it. "My brother," I said, my voice steady, "is an unemployed actor who believes that blockchain is a type of jewelry. He would not know a ledger from a lunch menu, but I appreciate that you have to investigate." I slid a binder across the table. I had spent the flight home organizing it. It was labeled simply, "Source and Use of Funds 2015 to present." "Arthur, you will find 10 years of personal bank statements in there," I continued. "You will see that every single cent I sent to my family came from my post-tax salary and bonuses from this company. You will see the outflows to the Aspen mortgage, the car leases, and the credit card bills. And if you turn to tab 4, you will see the actual crypto trading records." Arthur opened the binder. He flipped to tab 4. "These aren't your accounts," he muttered, adjusting his glasses. "No," I said. "They belong to Robert Brightwell, my father. You will see that he lost $200,000 of home equity in a scheme called Bit Horizon, and you will see that I did not fund it. I only paid the interest on the debt he secretly accrued to prevent the bank from seizing the house. I am not the embezzler. Arthur, I am the victim of financial abuse." Arthur and the HR director spent the next 20 minutes in silence, turning pages. The silence was the sound of my vindication. They saw the emails. They saw the forged signature on the loan document I had uncovered. They saw the sheer, staggering volume of money I had poured into a black hole to keep my family afloat. Arthur finally closed the binder. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. When he looked up, the suspicion was gone, replaced by a profound, simmering anger, but it was not directed at me. "He tried to use me," Arthur said quietly. "He called my private line. He tried to weaponize this firm's compliance policy to blackmail you because you cut off his allowance." "Yes," I said. "He thought if he threatened my job, I would panic and wire the money to silence him." Arthur stood up. He walked over to the intercom on the wall. "Get me legal. Get me Harrison inside here. Now." Harrison was the company's general counsel. He was a shark in a 3-piece suit who enjoyed litigation the way other people enjoyed fine wine. "You are cleared, Imogen," Arthur said, turning back to me. "Your access is fully restored, and as for your family, Vanguard looks after its own. If they want a war, we will give them a war." By noon, I was sitting in Harrison's office. We were drafting a letter. It was not a letter of defense. It was a letter of demand. "The forgery is our leverage," Harrison said, tapping a pen against his chin. "But we need to reclaim the assets. Did you ever have a written agreement that the money you sent was a loan?" "My father always said family is a business," I said. "But he never signed a contract with me." "It doesn't have to be a contract," Harrison said. "An email, a text message, anything where he acknowledged the debt." I scrolled through my archived cloud messages. I went back 4 years. I found it. A text from my father, sent after I paid a particularly large lump sum to fix the roof of the Aspen Lodge. "Thanks for covering the roof, kiddo." The text read, "Put it on my tab. When we sell the place for $10 million, I will pay you back every cent with interest. That is a promise." Harrison smiled. It was a predatory smile. "Perfect. That is an acknowledgement of debt. It changes the nature of your payments from a gift to a zero-interest loan. And since the house is now in pre-foreclosure, the condition of when we sell is imminent." We drafted the document. It was brutal. We demanded the immediate repayment of $450,000, half of the total I had contributed, citing the text message as a binding promissory note. We demanded that Robert Brightwell immediately refinance the unauthorized loan to remove my name as guarantor, or we would file a police report regarding the forged signature. We sent it via courier to the Aspen address, with a copy to Mr. Vance, the lawyer who had accidentally exposed them at the party. 2 days later, the response came. It was from a strip mall lawyer my father had likely hired with the last remaining limit on a credit card I hadn't known about. The letter was a masterpiece of absurdity. Robert was threatening to countersue. His claim, elderly abandonment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The letter argued that by cutting off the utilities in the middle of winter, I had endangered the lives of frail elderly citizens who were dependent on my care. It demanded I reinstate the power immediately and pay spousal support to them, citing obscure filial responsibility laws that had not been enforced in Colorado since the 1950s. I read the letter and laughed. My father was 58 years old. He played 18 holes of golf 3 times a week. He was not frail. He was just lazy. "Ignore it," Harrison said. "It is a bluff. He can't afford to sue you. He can't even afford the filing fee." But while the lawyers played their games, I decided to do some investigating of my own. I wanted to know how they were surviving. I knew I had cut off every card. I knew the bank accounts were empty, yet they were still in the house. They were still eating. I went online. I started checking the local classifieds in Aspen. Then I checked eBay. I searched for sellers located within 10 miles of the zip code 81611. I scrolled through pages of old ski gear and generic items. Then, I saw it. A seller named Mountain Luxury Finds. Account created 3 days ago. The first item listed was a set of antique silver candlesticks. Sterling silver, 19th century, minor wear. I recognized them instantly. I had bought them for my mother for her 50th birthday. I had paid $3,000 for them at an auction in London. The current bid was $200. I clicked on the seller's other items. There was a vintage telescope from the library. There was the designer handbag I had given my mother last Christmas. There was even a set of unused golf clubs, my father's backup set, and then the item that made my blood run cold. Vintage emerald brooch, Art Deco style. It was my grandmother's brooch, the only heirloom in the family that actually meant something. My grandmother had left it to me in her will, but my mother had held on to it for safekeeping because she said I would lose it in the city. Tyler was selling it. My brother, the one who accused me of embezzlement, was fencing the family heirlooms on the internet to buy groceries, or more likely, to buy a plane ticket out of the mess he had helped create. I looked at the photos. They were taken on the dining room table. I could see the reflection of the seller in the silver of the candlesticks. It was Tyler, holding his phone, wearing a hoodie. He wasn't just selling their things, he was selling my things. That brooch was legally mine. I picked up the phone and dialed Harrison. "Don't send the response letter yet," I said. "We have a new development. I need you to draft a cease and desist order to eBay, and I need you to contact the Aspen Police Department." "What do we have?" Harrison asked. "We have theft," I said, "and I have photographic evidence. They aren't just squatters anymore, Harrison. They are looters." I looked at the listing for the brooch. Buy it now. $500. He was selling a $5,000 heirloom for $500 just to get quick cash. It was the perfect metaphor for how they had treated me my entire life. They traded my long-term value for their short-term comfort. I moved the mouse cursor over the Buy It Now button. I could buy it back. I could save it. I hesitated. No. If I bought it, I would give money to Tyler. I was funding the enemy. I took a screenshot of the listing instead. I printed it out. I added it to the file. "Let him sell it," I whispered to the empty office. "Let them sell everything. When the sheriff arrives to evict them, I want them to be standing in an empty house with nothing but the clothes on their backs." I was not just fighting for money anymore. I was fighting for a total liquidation of the past. The collapse of the Brightwell dynasty did not happen with a thunderous explosion. It happened with the quiet, relentless rustle of paper. It took 60 days for the entire facade to crumble into dust. Without my monthly injection of $18,500, the financial immune system of the family failed immediately. The bank does not care about social standing. The bank does not care about how many parties you have hosted or how grand your last name sounds. The bank cares about the first of the month. February arrived, and with it came the foreclosure acceleration notice. Because my father had been paying the mortgage with a line of credit that was now maxed out, and because I had stopped paying the principal, the loan went into default with terrifying speed. The bank invoked the acceleration clause. They demanded full balance, $3 million, due immediately. Robert tried to maneuver. He tried to sell the house. He actually found a buyer, a tech CEO from Austin who wanted a turnkey ski lodge. They were ready to sign a cash offer that might have saved my parents from total ruin, leaving them with perhaps a small nest egg. But Robert Brightwell had forgotten one crucial detail: me. When I filed the affidavit regarding the forged signature on the second mortgage, I also filed a lis pendens on the property. In legal terms, it is a giant red flag planted on the title. It notifies any potential buyer that the property is subject to an active lawsuit regarding its ownership and debt. I blocked the sale. My lawyer, Harrison, explained it to Robert's cut-rate attorney in a brief phone call. "Ms. Brightwell asserts that the lien on the house is fraudulent. Until the matter of the forgery is resolved in federal court, the title is frozen. You cannot sell a crime scene. Robert." My father called me. He left voicemails screaming that I was vindictive, that I was trapping them. I did not listen. I just archived them. He was not trapped by me. He was trapped by the lie he had signed my name to. While Robert fought the bank, Tyler fought reality and lost. Ashley, his fiancée, was not a woman built for adversity. She was a woman built for brunch. When Tyler's credit cards remained declined for a third week, and when she realized that the trust fund he bragged about was actually just a sister he had alienated, the romance evaporated. She did not break up with him in person. She changed her relationship status on social media to single and posted a photo of herself on a plane to Miami. Tyler was left with a cubic zirconia replica ring. He had returned the real one to pay for a lawyer and a shattered ego. He tried to spin it as a mutual decision. But everyone in our circle knew the truth. He was broke, and in their world, being broke is a contagious disease. Then came the fall of the matriarch. This was the image that stuck with me the most. I received a report from the private investigator I had hired to keep an eye on the assets. Attached was a grainy photo taken through a glass window. It showed Eleanor Brightwell wearing a green polyester smock. She was standing behind a register at a budget grocery store on the outskirts of Aspen. My mother, who once claimed she was allergic to polyester, was bagging canned beans for minimum wage. They had no cash. My father's accounts were frozen or empty. Tyler had no income. They needed to eat. So, for the first time in 30 years, Eleanor had to trade her labor for survival. She looked exhausted in the photo. Her hair was not dyed. Her nails were not manicured. She looked like a woman who had woken up from a 3-decade coma to find the world was a hard, cold place. I felt a twinge of pity, but I suffocated it with logic. She was able-bodied. She was working. That is what adults do. I had been working 80-hour weeks since I was 22 to pay for her manicures. It was only fair that she worked 40-hour weeks to pay for her own bread. By March, the eviction was finalized. They did not leave with dignity. The sheriff arrived to enforce the bank's possession order. They had to pack their lives into a rented U-Haul truck. They moved from the 5,000-square-foot timber estate to a 2-bedroom apartment in a complex near the highway, the kind of place with peeling paint and oil stains in the parking lot. From my office in New York, I watched the final act of desperation play out in the media. Robert, cornered and furious, tried to destroy my reputation one last time. He contacted a tabloid reporter and gave a sob-story interview. The headline read, "Heartless millionaire daughter throws elderly parents into the street." He painted himself as a victim of elder abuse. He claimed I had stolen the family fortune. He claimed I was a monster who let her parents freeze. It might have worked in 1990, but this is the internet age. The article went viral, but not in the way he intended. Internet sleuths found his public Instagram profile, which he had foolishly left active. They found the photos from 6 months ago, Robert smoking cigars on a yacht, Robert driving a leased Porsche, Robert bragging about his investing genius. The comments section was a bloodbath. "Wait, this guy was flying private last year, and now he wants sympathy," wrote one user. "The daughter didn't steal his money. She just stopped giving him hers," wrote another. "Look at the court records. He forged her signature. He is a crook." The public sympathy he craved turned into public mockery. He was exposed not as a victim, but as a parasite who had finally been detached from the host. He deleted his social media accounts within 24 hours, retreating into the obscurity of his rented apartment. It was during that chaotic move, the transition from the palace to the tenement, that the final emotional blow landed. The private investigator told me the details later. Based on what he heard from the movers, they were clearing out the basement storage unit, the damp room where they threw everything they didn't care about. Eleanor found a dusty cardboard box labeled Imogen, college years. She opened it, perhaps looking for something to sell. Instead, she found my old leather-bound journal. I had written in it during my senior year of university. It detailed the acceptance letter I received from a prestigious art institute in Paris, my dream. It detailed the phone call from Dad saying the business was in trouble and they needed help. It detailed my decision to decline the art scholarship, switch my major to finance, and take the high-paying corporate job I hated, just so I could send checks home. I am giving up my life for them. I had written on the final page of the diary, "I hope one day they realize what this cost me. I hope they love me for it." Eleanor sat on a stack of packing crates in the cold driveway and read it. The movers said she sat there for an hour, reading the history of my sacrifice. She cried. She sobbed into the old, brittle paper. She finally understood. She realized that the ATM she had mocked had actually been a young girl who burned her own dreams to keep them warm. But tears are not currency. Regret does not pay back a stolen mortgage. She closed the diary and put it in the truck. It was a tragedy, certainly. But it was a tragedy they had written, line by line, check by check, insult by insult. I was just the editor who finally closed the book. The final act of the Brightwell drama did not take place in a courtroom or a bank vault. It took place in the marble-floored lobby of the Vanguard Solutions headquarters in downtown Manhattan, beneath a chandelier that cost more than my parents' new rented apartment. It was a Tuesday afternoon in April. The snow in Aspen had long since melted, revealing the mud beneath. Much like how the truth had revealed the rot in my family, I was in a budget meeting when the head of building security called my direct line. His voice was tense. He told me there was a man in the lobby causing a disturbance. He said the man claimed to be my father, but he was intoxicated and refusing to leave until I came down. I could have told security to remove him. I could have hidden in my ivory tower on the 45th floor, but I knew this moment was inevitable. A narcissist does not fade away quietly. They supernova. I straightened my blazer, checked my reflection in the window, and took the elevator down. When the doors slid open, the sound hit me first. My father was shouting. He stood near the reception desk, wearing a suit that was 2 seasons old and clearly unpressed. He looked thinner. His face was flushed with the ruddy complexion of cheap whiskey and high blood pressure. He was screaming at a terrified receptionist about respect, about bloodlines, about how he built this city. "I want to see her," he bellowed, spit flying from his lips. "I want to see the ungrateful witch who stole my life, Imogen. Get down here." I stepped out of the elevator. The click of my heels on the marble was sharp and authoritative. "I am here, Robert," I said. My voice was not loud, but it carried across the cavernous space. He spun around. For a second, I saw a flash of the old Robert Brightwell, the arrogance, the sneer. But it was quickly replaced by a look of desperate, feral hunger. He saw me not as a daughter, but as a walking wallet that had snapped shut. "You," he hissed, stumbling toward me. "Look at you, walking around like a queen while your mother cries herself to sleep on a foam mattress. You did this. You destroyed us." The lobby was full of clients, colleagues, couriers. They stopped to watch. I did not flinch. "I did not destroy you," I said calmly, standing my ground. "I simply stopped funding the illusion you built. You destroyed yourself the moment you forged my signature." "I gave you life," he screamed, lunging forward. 2 security guards stepped in, blocking his path, but he strained against them, his eyes bulging. "I raised you, I fed you, you owe me. You owe me everything." He reached out, his hand clawing at the air inches from my face. He wanted to hit me. I could see it in his eyes. He wanted to beat me back into submission, to make me small so he could feel big again. But I was not small anymore. I looked him dead in the eye. I did not see a father. I did not see a monster. I saw a stranger, a sad, angry stranger who had mistaken financial coercion for love. "I owe you nothing," I said, my voice steady and cold as steel. "You think you are entitled to my money because we share DNA. That is not how it works. You were never a father. Robert, you were a leech. Money was the only thing that ever connected us. It was the only language you spoke, and now that the account is closed, we have nothing left to say." He froze. The truth of it seemed to slap him harder than any physical blow. "You are dead to me," he whispered, his voice trembling with venom. "I have been dead to you for years," I replied. "You only noticed when the check stopped clearing." I nodded to the head of security. "Call the police. I want him removed for trespassing and harassment." "Imogen," he screamed as they grabbed his arms. "Imogen, you can't do this. I am your father. Bail me out. Don't let them take me." I turned my back on him. I walked toward the elevator. I heard the sirens approaching outside. I heard him begging for bail money, reverting instantly from threats to pleas. I did not turn around. I did not pay his bail. I let him sit in a holding cell for 24 hours until a public defender arranged his release. It was the first time in his life he had to face a consequence without my credit card as a shield. That was the climax. The resolution came 3 months later. The Timberline Lodge in Aspen, the symbol of their vanity and my servitude, was finally put up for auction by the bank. It was a distressed asset, tainted by the legal battles and the lien I had placed on it. I attended the auction via telephone. I did not buy it for sentimental reasons. I bought it because I am a businesswoman, and I know the value when I see it. I used my savings, the money I had accumulated in the 6 months since I stopped supporting 3 adults, to place the winning bid. I bought the house for $2 million, significantly under market value due to the foreclosure stigma. I owned it. My name was finally on the deed, not as a guarantor, Not as a co-signer, as the sole owner. I did not move in. I did not let my parents move back in. I hired a crew to clean it out. Removing every trace of the Brightwell legacy, I staged it, I marketed it, and 2 months later, I sold it to a tech billionaire for $4 million. I made a $2 million profit. I sat in my accountant's office looking at the check. It was a staggering sum. It was enough to retire on. But I didn't want to keep it all. That money felt heavy. It carried the weight of my lost 20s. The missed vacations, the skipped meals, the anxiety attacks. I kept half for my own security. With the other $1 million, I established a foundation. I called it the Phoenix Scholarship Fund. Its mission is specific. It provides full-ride scholarships and living stipends to young college students who are being forced to support their financially irresponsible parents. It gives them the freedom to say no. It gives them the chance to chase their dreams, to study art in Paris or engineering in Tokyo, without the guilt of a family anchoring them down. I turned my trauma into their ladder. 1 year later, it is Christmas Eve again. New York City is dusted with a layer of fresh white snow, reflecting the city lights like a sea of diamonds. I am in my apartment. It is not a cold, gray showroom anymore. It is warm. There are throw pillows in vibrant reds and golds. There is a Christmas tree in the corner, and it is a chaotic, beautiful mess. It is covered in mismatched ornaments, colored lights, and tinsel. My mother would hate it. She would say, "It is tacky." I think it is perfect. I am not alone. Sitting on the rug, untangling a string of lights, is Daniel. He is an architect I met 6 months ago. He has his own job, his own money, and his own self-respect. He doesn't need me to buy his dinner, but he buys mine anyway, just because he wants to. He looks up at me and smiles. "Hey, pass me the star. It is time for the topper." I hand him the star. I feel a sense of peace so profound it almost feels like a physical embrace. My phone buzzes on the kitchen counter. I walk over to it. I look at the screen. It is an unknown number. The area code is from a prepaid burner phone. I know who it is. It is Christmas Eve. They are sitting in their small apartment, likely remembering the parties, the caviar, the lights. They are calling to see if the guilt has finally cracked me. They are calling to see if the ATM is open for the holidays. I look at the phone. I do not feel anger. I do not feel sadness. I feel nothing but a distant, quiet pity. I do not decline the call. I simply slide the phone into the kitchen drawer. I turn the key in the lock. I pick up 2 glasses of wine and walk back to the living room. I handed one to Daniel. "Who was that?" he asks. "No one," I say, clinking my glass against his. "Just a telemarketer selling something I don't need anymore." We drink. Outside, the snow continues to fall, covering the tracks of the past, leaving everything clean, white, and new. I did not just cancel the autopay. I canceled the subscription to my own misery. And let me tell you, the price of freedom is worth every single penny. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and let's share our thoughts. If you enjoyed seeing justice served, please subscribe to the Veronica Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button so this story can reach even more people who need to hear it.